Welcome in, everybody, to the CFB Nation All-America podcast. I'm Bill Trocchi, senior editor at sportingnews.com, alongside Bill Bender, our national college football writer at sportingnews.com, and the president of the Football Writers Association of America. We're coming to you live on our CFB Nation YouTube channel again. If you want to subscribe, just go over to youtube.com, search CFB Nation, and click subscribe. We have a three-man booth today as the man behind Irish Breakdown, the brains, the boss of the Irish Breakdown podcast is here to talk all things Bryan Kelly, the former Notre Dame and now former LSU coach who was fired on Sunday following a loss to Texas A&M. Bryan, welcome in, and I hope you didn't stay up for the entire Dodgers-Blue Jays game last night.
No. Guys, honestly, I used to be a huge baseball fan. I haven't watched a single inning of baseball this whole season.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't end till
the whole strikeout walk home run thing is just not really my cup of tea.
3 a.m. Eastern time, anyway. So, Bender, you ready to go? You ready to talk a little BK?
Yeah, obviously, so Sunday evening, I'm getting ready to watch Packers Steelers and Rodgers, and I'm a huge Packers fan. And
it's a big night.
About 10 minutes before kickoff, Bryan Kelly got fired. So that was not ideal. I missed the first quarter. It's okay. I only needed to watch the second half anyway, apparently. But it's the latest in this crazy carousel, and now we have 8 Power 4 openings, and it's not November yet, is it? Is that this weekend? If we're getting into November, it's a pretty wild cycle. There's no question.
So we will, let's get into Bryan Kelly. Then we'll talk a little bit about Notre Dame's road to the playoff, because the at-large bids are shrinking, it seems. There's going to be some competition for those. But first, we're going to kick it off with a little Trocchi trivia. As we do every show, we ask a question at the beginning of the show, and then we reveal the answer at the end. Bryan and Bill, you can both think about this as we go through the show. Who are the longest tenured coaches in the SEC? Who are the 4 longest tenured coaches in the SEC? Can you name all 4? There's 1, then there's 2, and then there's a tie for 3rd between 2 people. So see if you
current head coaches
about that. Sorry,
current head coaches.
Current head coaches. Current head coaches, of which Bryan Kelly is not anymore. So we will go through Bryan Kelly. Halftime, Saturday night. LSU is 5-2. They have 2 losses to top 10 teams, both by 1 score on the road. They're beating the number 3 team in the country, 18-14. 1 second half meltdown later, and 1 day later, Bryan Kelly is gone. Were you surprised it happened that quick, Bryan?
Yeah, just because of how much he was owed. I mean, that's a small state. It's not a state that's just loaded with money. I mean, that's $50+ million plus what you're going to have to pay to buy out the rest of his staff. Honestly, I didn't think it was going to happen. People kept telling me, he's going to be gone at the end of the year. And I was like, well, maybe, but that's a lot of money to pay a coach, and especially a state like Louisiana. And that's not disparaging Louisiana. It's about size. It's a very small state. It's not like Texas or Florida, where it's just a different situation. But I think they were honestly left with no choice the way that game went down. I mean, it was just watching LSU just completely quit. That's not LSU football. That's not what we think when we think LSU football. Watching him just berate person after person on the sideline and player, coach, and it just was kind of like, this is what you want your program to be. And I think they were left with no choice. I mean, second year in a row they've lost by more than 4 touchdowns at home. I mean, it would have been 4 without the garbage touchdown at the end. Bama destroyed them last year. Tennessee destroyed them in 2022. That's not LSU football. And you're paying that guy a lot of money to do that. And I think he honestly left him with no choice the way that. Like, do you guys think if, let's just say the second half would have gone like the first half, but LSU makes that, or Texas A&M makes that one extra, play to win the game, that he gets fired on Sunday? I don't know that he does, but
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think like all the fans leaving and all the chanting and the fire Kelly and everything, and then just emotions were raw. And then apparently there was, reportedly testy discussions between the AD and Kelly that did not go well, and that obviously took a high stress situation to the next level. The governor was involved. Governor doesn't get involved if they don't lose by 30 or whatever it was. So, yeah, I think I agree that it was everything that happened in those third and fourth quarters.
Yeah, and that's why. I mean, at halftime, I had a different column written completely. You know, the aura of Tiger Stadium at night is gone a little bit. You mentioned that Alabama game. That was the other one. I don't know that they should have fired him. I mean, you could wait till the end of the year, and I don't know who they're going to find necessarily that's light years better than Brian Kelly. That's the other part of the problem. Yeah, you can fire him. That's fine. You can pay him $53 million, but it's kind of the same thing as James Franklin. If you're going to base hirings and firings on blowout losses in this new 12-team environment, I don't know if, you know, how many coaches are going to be around, because, you know, the SEC and the Big Ten in particular, it's more like the NFL. You can have a blowout loss. You can have, you know, a 3 or 4 loss season and be LSU. And to your point, BD, yeah, that's not LSU football, but, you know, there's going to be other 8-4 teams this year that shouldn't be 8-4 because they're all crammed into these conferences. Sure. You know, if Notre Dame loses to Pitt, you know, let's say Notre Dame loses to Pitt and they go 9-3. I don't see them making an emotional decision to fire Marcus Freeman. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My thing is not so much that it was a blowout. It was what you're watching on TV with you can just see that team had no interest in playing for him.
Right.
Just the berating other coaches, you know, screaming in a special team analyst's face. That'll what get you, you know, cost you your job. You know, just the constant, just terrible interactions and body language between him and Garrett Nussmeier. I think, Bill, that to me is what really compounded it, because that's been there, right? I mean, we've seen that in past LSU games this season. And if you're a Notre Dame fan, like I am, someone who followed Notre Dame for a long time, we're used to that. And that's really the thing that's bothered me when I watch the reaction to it nationally, is all these people acting like, wow, look how Brian Kelly's acting. And I'm like, where were you guys when he was doing this for a decade at Notre Dame? Where were you guys in 2015 when he sprinted down the sideline and attacked David Grimes on national TV? You know, one of his strength guys. I think that was the look. You know what I mean, Bill? Like, it was like, wow, that's a bad look. You know what I mean? Like, this guy's just going off on every coach. He's getting in people's faces. The players have just completely tuned him out. I think that had as much to do with it as the final score, to your point, because, like, they didn't fire him after the Bama game last year, and that was a far worse beatdown than this one, because Bama whooped them for 4 quarters.
Right.
I think it's just the optics of it as well, and just the kind of, I mean, you just hear some things that people are saying coming out of the firing, like, man, this guy was this and this guy was that, and I think that played as much of a role in it. But when you're winning, you can act like any kind of butthead that you want to act like. When you start losing, that you know, we're not going to tolerate that. You know, I think that played a role in it as well.
I think the Brian Kelly and James Franklin firings are very similar from the standpoint of it wasn't just one result. You know, I think the buildup to Franklin, the back-to-back losses to Northwestern and UCLA, hell, that UCLA game feels like 3 months ago now. But the buildup to that and the frustration of not being, you know, in a national championship caliber team. I mean, I'm saying all along, Brian, like, Penn State was tied with Notre Dame with 5 minutes left in the semifinals with the chance to go to the championship game.
1 minute left.
I mean, like, it was a very tight game. And, you know, all of a sudden, Franklin's gone. LSU, I still think a little bit of it and a lot bit of it is fit matters in college football. I've said it on this show. I've said it on every show that I go on. And from the second he pulled off the fake Boston accent, or the fake Bayou accent, I'm sorry. Yeah. From that second, you were like, now you can fit and still be a bad coach in spots like Ed O was, but I'm really interested to see where LSU goes from here, because, like I said, there is a risk factor at Penn State and LSU. Penn State more so to me, that if they hire the wrong guy in that conference, they can sink to 8-4 every year real quick, and 7-5. LSU, same deal. I mean, you're in a conference now where Vandy and Mizzou are competing for playoff spots. There's no, you know, and when the standard is 3 of your last 4 coaches have won national titles, it's going to be a little bit tougher.
Oh, their standard
Bill,
is unbelievable. I was looking this up. Since 2000, when Saban got there, they have finished under 500 in the SEC twice. That's it. 2 times in 25, 26 years. So, yeah, the standard is very high at LSU. I mean, those are like Ohio State numbers almost. And that's why they didn't have any patience. Let's go back to
can I ask just a real quick follow-up question for you guys?
yeah.
Do you think Penn State made itself a less attractive job for the way that they got? Because, like, I agree with you, Bill. I completely understand Brian Kelly getting fired. Like, they were subpar for 4 years. I mean, you lost 3 games to the Heisman Trophy winner and one of the best offenses in SEC history. Do you think the way that they did James Franklin, like, dude, you were playing in the Big Ten title a year ago, 3 straight 10+ win seasons. You made it to the college football semifinals, and yeah, you had a bad start to the season, which is going to happen in this era. Do you think that made it tougher? Like, do I really want to take that job where I could go, 10-3, 11-2, and 13-3, and get fired the next year if we get off to a bad start after 6 games? Because I think that Florida hurt itself that way as well with how they did Dan Mullen. I think
Florida's been doing it with the last 4 coaches. Like that,
at least Dan Mullen had success,
right? They're so far removed from the urban era that, I mean, to me, yeah. And then Penn State, that would be my first question if I was interviewing for the job. Be like, well, if I win 10 games every year and I can't beat Ohio State because Ohio State is just better most years, yeah, I'll compete with them. But that was the thing; they never stole one from them. I agree 100%. I think LSU is going to well, let me ask a question back, and we can just, instead of argue like we normally do, we can just ask each other questions. I feel like I need to fight with you about something if we're going to be on here. But
you can call me afterwards, buddy. We got plenty of things we can fight about. Wait till we get to the Notre Dame's playoff odds. We'll have plenty to debate there. Yeah.
So LSU to me is more likely to make like the splash hire, like to go out and get Lane. Whereas Penn State, I'm like, if they don't get Matt Rule, they're going to probably hire somebody that the fan base isn't all that excited about. So I do think LSU makes this move. I'm just picturing the governor and the boosters in the room. I wish I was in that room. To
probably a nice room. It was in the governor's mansion, so it's probably a pretty nice room.
That they have, that they're more likely to make a splash hire here and go hire somebody than Penn State does, and to me that spells Lane Kiffin in some ways.
So let's go back to like the decision for Brian Kelly to leave Notre Dame to go to LSU, because that's the flashpoint for a lot of Notre Dame fans over the last 3 or 4 years. It's the reason why Notre Dame fans check the Notre Dame score and then they check the LSU score for the last 3 or 4 years. They're not going to do that anymore. Who is it? What's the second choice now for checking scores, Brian, when Notre Dame fans are kind of scrolling through? It's not going to be LSU, or maybe it still will be LSU. I don't know, but
it's going to still be LSU, because then when LSU wins and starts being LSU again, they're going to be like, see, Brian Kelly was the problem.
Yeah, even more anti-Kelly stuff.
They're going to be back to looking at Michigan and USC scores again. That's what's going to happen, really.
Brian Kelly, win percentage at Notre Dame, 739. His win percentage at LSU, 708. So he actually had a higher winning percentage at Notre Dame. Kelly's best AP postseason ranking in 3 years at LSU, and probably the 4th year also. He was not going to get in the top 12 this year. His highest ranking at LSU was 12. He finished better than 12 5 times during his tenure at Notre Dame. So he did better at Notre Dame than LSU. He left Notre Dame for LSU because he thought he could do better. He did not do better. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, if we're being honest about his track record at Notre Dame, this is something that I said for years. They beat all the teams they're supposed to, and they beat very few of the teams that they were not supposed to. I mean, if you look at Brian
Franklin, you sound like you're describing James Franklin at Penn State.
Exactly. That's why I laugh when people are like, "You're going to replace Brian Kelly or James Franklin with Brian Kelly." I was like, "So you're going to get a less, not as good a recruiting version of James Franklin at Penn State?" That makes a lot of sense. Although for me, as someone who likes to go after Penn State fans, that'd be the ultimate. Like for me, is I get to troll Penn State fans and Brian Kelly all at the same time. But I mean, let's be honest about this, right? When you're at Notre Dame, like Notre Dame's got tough schedules. There's no question, but there's just more of those losable games for a coach who's not as good as people think he is, and it also speaks to, I still say this, I've been saying this, you guys know me, you guys have both known me a long time. Brian Kelly wasted talent at Notre Dame. I mean, in 2021, his last year, he went 11-1. They played two teams that were ranked when they were played, Wisconsin and Cincinnati. They went 1-1 in those two games. They ended up blowing Wisconsin out, but they were losing at the beginning of the third quarter or fourth quarter. You don't coach at LSU and go through a season where you only play two games against ranked opponents, and he dominated the ACC. There was a stretch where they won like 27, 28 ACC games, during the regular season. And, he was at the end of his career. USC was not very good during his career. He went 5-3 against USC in his career, or no, so it would be 6-3. And 3 of those years or 8-3, excuse me. In 3 of those years that they beat USC, they had an interim head coach when Notre Dame played them. Stanford, he got dominated by Stanford his first 7 years. Then Stanford falls off the cliff, and then he starts beating Stanford every year. So, it's not a coincidence that early in the 2000s, when Lane had a couple good USC teams and Sark then had a good USC team and Stanford was rolling, he had a losing record against those two teams. And had a bunch of 8-5, 9-4 type of disappointing seasons early at Notre Dame as well. I mean, guys, he went 8-5 at Notre Dame with 2 future Hall of Famers on his roster, and Harrison Smith and Zach Martin. They also had Michael Floyd, Tyler Eifert, Manti Te'o, and they went 8-5. And it wasn't until the schedules got softer and he was basically gifted some very good defensive coordinators because of actions that Jack Swarbrick and Chad Klunder at the time. They started to win, and they started to win against weaker schedules. They went 11-2 in 2019, and the only 2 wins that they had over ranked opponents were Virginia and Navy. That's why Brian Kelly had a better record at Notre Dame. He was the same guy at Notre Dame, and this is what I kept telling people for years. It's just you're going to get more exposed when you go to the SEC. It was actually the opposite for him. He thought it was going to be easier to win. It's harder to win. Yes, you can have advantages at LSU that you don't have at Notre Dame, but you're also going to play a different type of schedule week after week than you would.
So I listened to your show yesterday, or I don't know when it was, Sunday night maybe, and you talked about there was a lot of behind the scenes anti-Kelly feelings among former players, how he behaved with the former players and all that kind of stuff, and that Notre Dame wasn't quite getting the results that they wanted. But there was such a pushback when he left for LSU. Instead of like a good riddance, we're ready to move on from somebody else. I feel like Notre Dame fans really resented the fact that he left. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then why weren't they more like, oh, it's a relief, let's turn to something new? Because it's similar a little bit maybe to Franklin. It had played out and it didn't get where it was going, where they wanted it to go. I think Penn State fans are relieved to try to start over, but I don't feel like that's how the feeling was around Notre Dame at that time.
Well, now if you look at Notre Dame fans on Twitter, they all act like, hey, I was happy he was gone. We tried to tell you guys that he was bad. But honestly, a big reason why there was a lot of that sentiment, Bill, is because Brian Kelly had convinced the fan base that this is the best Notre Dame can do. There was a lot of people say, well, you can't recruit at Notre Dame. It's too hard. You got to shop down in different aisles, Brian Kelly's expression he said then, which Marcus Freeman is completely blown out of the water. And so did Charlie Weiss, by the way, because the one thing Charlie could do is recruit big-time football players. And so I just think a lot of people are convinced. We hadn't won a title since '88 was the thing, and he brought respectability. I mean, I still deal with this with some Notre Dame fans. He brought consistency to the program, and I'm like, did he really? And I just think it was that. It's kind of like, I don't even know what psychological term to use, but you just kind of been beaten down so much, and you'd had so many bad coaches that a coach that can do the things that Brian Kelly did, you're like, hey, it can get worse. And I think that was a lot of the sentiment was like, hey, look, we went through bad coach after bad coach after bad coach. Yeah, Kelly had his problems, but he went to the playoffs twice, BCS game, it could get worse. And my response is, yeah, it could get worse, but could also get a lot better. And that's kind of what they're going through. But I think that's a lot of it, Bill, is Notre Dame was in a period where they were still winning a bunch of games. Yeah, we know we can't beat the Bamas of the world. And I'm like, well, why should we reserve ourselves to that? You know what I mean? Like, why should we accept that? But I think a lot of people felt that way because of how bad it had been prior to Bryan Kelly arriving.
I don't know, man. I'm kind of on that side. Like, he had 7 straight seasons with 10 or more wins. But
They went 5-5 against top 25 teams in his last 3 years in Notre Dame.
And he went 4-5 against top 10 teams at LSU. That's not
because he's
horrible.
not a great coach.
That's not horrible. I love
Lou Holtz, but the standard is at Notre Dame is Lou Holtz beat 8 top 10 teams in his in 88 and 89. Like, that's what you're supposed to do at Notre Dame. But
how many coaches can do that though? Like Ryan
Day, that's
the
standard though.
Right. That's a ridiculous standard, quite frankly.
Not at Notre Dame.
Yeah, it is. Like, I think so, not. Because Ryan Day was dealing with that up until last year. Like, Ryan Day can't beat a top 5 team. And then he finally shut everybody up.
Well, Ryan Day beat top 5 teams all the time. He just couldn't win a championship. I mean, he beat Penn State all those years that they were in the top 5.
I think it was, you can look, but his record against top 5 teams before this playoff run, and, he has a different issue that we don't have time to get into, that he has to solve here in about 5 weeks. But, I think that's ridiculous. Like, you're right about this, I think the thing that you've said that makes the most sense is, the teams he was beating at Notre Dame, these weak schedules, the Wisconsin year, you can go 10-1 against that. But in the SEC, you're playing 4 and 5 ranked teams. But if you go 500 against top 10 teams in the SEC, that's not bad to me. That's not, again, it could be worse. You could be 2-8. You could be James Franklin. You could be 4-21. Everybody knows that statistic. So I just think my view on Bryan Kelly, and I'm not a Notre Dame fan. I'm certainly not an LSU fan. I think he's a very good coach who the reasons he left Notre Dame for LSU are wrong. You said you're going to go to LSU and win a national championship. Well, I think Notre Dame and LSU have equal shot to win a national championship, even though LSU's done it 3 times, once with probably the best team since the college football playoff era, maybe the best team ever, that 2019 team. But that was based off a lot of factors. I mean, Brian, you could probably go out and throw a couple bubble screens to Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. So, maybe, but that's my point. I can give you
about 2 or 3, and then I'm out, and then I'm,
Well, not okay. So, and I'll go at this guy, Irish Guardian Not says the main reason I have a hard time watching the show a lot of the time, like, I don't have an Ohio brain syndrome. First of all, I'm a Big Ten homer. So what? Like, what? I would love to hear what I'm saying that's so ridiculous about Notre Dame. I said yesterday on a show, Notre Dame was set up in a lot of ways because of what Bryan Kelly did for what Marcus Freeman's done. You can disagree all you want, but like, you could have had
because it's wrong.
Well, why?
I mean, like, Bryan Kelly inherited a better roster than the one he left Marcus Freeman. That's a fact. It's not even debatable.
What Notre Dame standard do you have? You guys sound like Penn State fans. No offense. Like you haven't won a national title since 1988. Period.
Okay.
So how are you talking about a standard?
So was it
40 years ago?
Did you have the same feeling when Georgia fans fought when Georgia fired Mark Richt, that they had an unfair standard?
I did. I said that.
At least you're consistent.
That's the
because they hadn't won a title since 1981.
I probably wrote the same thing about Mark Richt. That I said, you're taking a huge risk firing a coach that's won all these games, and Kirby knocked it out of the park, right? Who's to say that Notre Dame went until last year? They were ready to turn on Marcus Freeman after you lose to Marshall. I mean,
some people were. Some people were sure.
It was pretty loud after the Northern Illinois loss. There's not a lot of people that predicted that Notre Dame was going to go on the run that they did after losing to Northern Illinois. It was pretty loud. Go ahead.
I did. I get what you're saying, Bill, but
you're
here's
one of
here's
one.
the reality of it. You absolutely don't hit to 100% of the shots you don't take, right? And the reality is you have to have a standard of what your program's going to be about. And I understand when you go from like the end of World War II to 1997 to win a title, and then from 1997 to half a title to 2013, maybe your standard is just Rose Bowls. I mean, I understand all that, but that's not the standard at Notre Dame. And you know, you don't hire a coach to say, well, we're just going to go beat up on all the unranked teams, and we're totally fine going 5-5. I mean, over Brian Kelly's 12 years, he went 4-12 against top 10 teams. Do you know the 12 previous years before he got hired, they won 5 games against top 10 teams? He actually won fewer games against top 10 opponents under Brian Kelly than you did the previous 12 years.
They weren't ready to get rid of Kelly, though, right? They weren't ready to get rid of him.
People like me were ready to get rid of Brian Kelly. But here's why. See, this notion that, Notre Dame just wanted to keep Brian Kelly, it's not true. Here's what happened. So Brian Kelly spent the entire 2021 season trying to negotiate a new deal. Jack Swarbrick would not give him because he just gave him a new deal before and basically said, if you want more money, you've got to raise the bar a little bit because we're tired of just going to the postseason and getting blasted. Because Notre Dame is better than that. And Brian Kelly kept making excuses like, no, this is who we are. And this is, this is hard and that's hard and it's hard. And he never embraced Notre Dame, just like he never embraced LSU. And there was always excuses for why the bar was set here. Well, yeah, you took a risk, Bill. That's always true. Anytime you get rid of a coach leaves or whatever, there's always risk. Absolutely agree with that. But when you're a place like Notre Dame, you take that risk because the standard should always be what it is. And then, of course, Marcus Freeman has not completely lived up to that standard because the standard is national championships. But what we've seen under Marcus Freeman is he's won more games against top 25 teams last year than Brian Kelly won in his last 5 years at Notre Dame combined. He won more New Year's Six bowl games in a week and a half in January than Brian Kelly won in 12 years. So while he hasn't risen to the full standard yet, the reality is that you're like, okay, that's what we expect you to do. Right. And he's shown that you can recruit at an elite level. You can do these things. You can go beat these teams. And he's never made excuses for the things that keep holding Notre Dame back. He embraces those things just like Lou Holtz did. And that's the problem is if you want to say, well, that's a ridiculous standard, that's fine. That's fair. But if you don't want that, then don't come to Notre Dame. Go root for somebody else. Like take. I think like Marcus Freeman said it yesterday. It's like it is what it is. I thought James Franklin's answer on game day to the whole thing was great. I thought he gave a great. It's like, look, this is what you're expected to do at a place like this. I think it was ridiculous that they fired James Franklin, but just like Notre Dame didn't fire Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly chose to leave. Because Brian Kelly thought it'd be easier to get in the players that he wanted to get in. He could shop down the right aisle at LSU, and it would be easier without thinking like, dude, you don't get to play the ACC for half your schedule this year. You know what I mean? And very rarely did Notre Dame get a top ACC team. They got Clemson in 15, then they got Clemson again in 20, and then they got him back-to-back in 22 and 23, but Brian Kelly was gone by that point in time. So Miami was down. Florida State was down. They never beat Florida State with a ranked Florida State team during Kelly's time. I think it was 3-0 against Florida State after 2014. Didn't beat a ranked Florida State team.
I would say that, like I said, it goes both ways. I think Notre Dame, by hiring Marcus Freeman, they could get to they could win a national championship with them. They could go back to the national championship game this year, the way that they're playing and the way that the playoff field is open. It's just like the speech that I was hearing from Penn State, like every year, we're a national championship program. We're whatever Pat Kraft called them, a national powerhouse. You're really Notre Dame. This is separate from Penn State. Penn State's really not. Like they've been in the Big Ten since 1994. They've won like 3 Big Ten championships. They haven't won a national championship since 3 or 4 tops.
But only once in the title game era.
They were a third wheel for Michigan and Ohio State, which most teams have been. And if that's chronic Ohio brain syndrome, I don't care. That's what the Big Ten.
No, I've said that on our lifetime. Just so we can make sure we're on the same page on stuff. No, I've said that on the show. They will never be anything better than the 3rd best program in that state. And as long as still nice in Oregon, they're always going to be at best 4th. We're not even talking about USC.
That's a tougher job. And if USC ever got their act together, they'd be 5th. And Nebraska ever got their act together, they might be 6th. So, different world with Penn State than Notre Dame, in my opinion. But I mean, I think when we start, I think the standard in college football and why these coaching firings is happening is it's all about the playoff now. Oh, we're not in the playoff. We got to get rid of this guy. Like it is becoming that. And
Sure.
and if anybody doesn't think it is, I mean, what was the first thing we said about LSU after this Texas A&M blowout was unfolding? Oh, they're not going to make the playoff now. If Notre Dame loses another game at any point in this final stretch, oh, they're out of the playoff now. It doesn't matter that they go 9-3 is now not good anymore. And some schools are going to have to accept.
I think it's okay to say that 9-3 is not good enough at Notre Dame. The question is, do you fire a guy because he went 9-3? And that's my beef with Penn State is they should not have been happy with 3-3 with losses to UCLA and Northwestern. They should have been pissed about that. But there's a difference in being pissed about it and saying, hey, next year you better get back on track, and then firing a guy who had the success. Because, like, look, I'm not a big James Franklin fan. I'm not a James Franklin apologist by any stretch of the imagination. I personally don't care for the guy. But at the same time, it's like, I kind of think you forget what it was like for a while at your program, and Penn State, I don't think should have the same standard as Notre Dame. Penn State was an elite program for the 80s, and that was like really it. I mean, they weren't winning titles in the 60s and 70s and 50s and then 2000s. I mean, I just think it's a different thing, but it's kind of like if Marcus Freeman loses to BC, I'm going to rip him, and it's a disappointing season, underachieving, not good enough. You're not going to hear me advocating for him to be fired. Like, that's the difference. And what makes LSU different is they have underachieved for 4 straight years under Brian Kelly. They shouldn't have been a 3-loss team in 2022. That's the thing.
The Penn State thing had played out, though, right? I mean, it was a long time. It was like 12 years. They pushed all their chips to the middle of the table for this season, and they were unable to beat the top 10 teams, and then they were losing to the other teams. I don't know if it was necessarily a quick trigger. I don't know if Penn State can be accused of having a quick trigger because they pushed everything in the middle for this season. Franklin talked about this season. It was all about this season. They followed the blueprint of Ohio State and Michigan. This was it. They're 3-3. Everybody's booing. And it was like, we've been down this road year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11. It's like, okay, this is it. Now they always win the games they're supposed to win. Well, now they weren't even winning those. And so that gave them an excuse to kind of finally pull the trigger. So BD, we want to touch on Notre Dame's playoff chances real quick before we get out of here. Bill's got his media tour lined up, so we got to run through this in about 4 or 5 minutes. But, there's 7 at-large spots in the CFP. Notre Dame is going to come up short in a at-large debate against Miami and against Texas A&M if those teams are in the same pool. They're swimming in the same pool. So that only leaves 5 spots.
I don't agree with the Miami.
If A&M doesn't win the SEC, if Miami doesn't win the ACC, the head-to-head is going to count against Notre Dame. I think we can agree on that. The Indiana-Ohio State loser grabs an at-large. Now we're down to 4. So, and it's just a lot of crowded. Oh, well, what's the path for ND?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't agree that if Notre Dame and Miami have the same record, it's automatically Miami's going to get the advantage. Miami will get the bump for the head-to-head and should. The committee has shown that games that happen early in the season don't matter as much and don't count as much. The overall resume for Miami is not going to look great if they get another loss. That's the difference. Where if A&M gets 2 losses, it's going to be to like 2 pretty good football teams when you look at what's left on their schedule. And they've got way better wins. So I think A&M's a different story. And if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're like, go A&M because they're knocking off other potential at-large teams if they keep running the table. I think Notre Dame just needs to keep doing what they're doing. If you look at all the metrics that people look at, the computer models, I think Notre Dame's in the top 5 in the FPI, the Fermo Efficiency Index, Sagarin, Massey rating. Part of it is those computer models also look at USC as a lot better team than they are. I still can't believe Michigan's ranked ahead of USC right now in the top 25 of the AP. I don't think that'll be the case in the CFB poll that comes out next week. I just think they need to keep doing what they're doing. There's still a lot of matchups between teams that are ahead of them. people say, well, are you worried about those 2-loss SEC teams? Well, there's 4 ranked 2-loss SEC teams right now, and they're all behind Notre Dame, like significantly behind Notre Dame. What about the 1-loss ACC teams? Well, they're still also ranked behind Notre Dame right now. When you look at Virginia, I think the bigger concern for Notre Dame is what if Miami wins out and Georgia Tech only drops a game, and that's who plays each other in the ACC. That's where it might get hairy for Notre Dame not to host. But I just don't. I mean, everything. There are so many factors that would have to go perfectly for Notre Dame not to be in the playoff that it's almost impossible for those things to happen. Part of me says, yeah, I kind of felt that way about Arizona State winning the Big 12 last year, and it happened. But it's just a little bit different. So I think really the focus that we are having right now at Irish Breakdown is not so much will they get in if they win out. It's if you win out, you've got to look good doing it, because if you're beating a bunch of mediocre teams by field goals, you don't belong in the playoffs. And there's precedent of Notre Dame dropping if they don't play well. We saw that in 2015.
So don't look
winning,
like Texas. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right? Don't look like
right,
Texas.
Exactly. Don't look like you did in 15 when you barely beat Wake Forest and Boston College, who stunk, and then you dropped behind Oklahoma, rightfully so. Keep doing what you're doing. Notre Dame's going to be in. The question then is, will they host or not? I think that's going to be the bigger question.
I think all they have to do is win out. 10-2 Notre Dame's in, and there might be some tricky arguments, but there's enough SEC carnage along the way here. Right now we have, in our latest playoff projection, we have Notre Dame as like the first team out, but it's kind of like, do I really believe 5 SEC teams are going to get in with all the games left? Probably not. I mean, I think you're looking at the conference that's going to lose a playoff team will be the Big Ten. They're probably going to get 3 in, and that, I don't know if we have time to get into it, the existential schedule question. But I mean, the fact that Notre Dame beat USC, who beat Michigan, works out in a huge advantage for Notre Dame, because I think at the end of the road, you're looking at Michigan will probably be 9-2 when they go to Ohio State. They'll be 10-point underdogs. They were 20-point underdogs in that game, but how'd that work out last year? And I think they'll feel confident that they can at least give Ohio State a run in Ann Arbor. USC, their big game's Oregon. If they beat Oregon, finish 10-2, they've got to go to Nebraska this week. So at the end of that road, though, it feels like all of those kind of collection of Big Ten teams behind the Big Three will probably be 9-3 or worse. So they're not going to put them in over a 10-2 Notre Dame team. It's Texas A&M's a tricky argument if that came down to the last spot, but I think Texas A&M is going to go 11-1 at this point. Are you taking Texas to beat Texas A&M?
Not
I don't
right
think
now.
too many, not right now. So then you'll get into it, and then I think Notre Dame will wind up in that. Like you said, it feels like 8 or 9. Maybe they get a home game around 8. Maybe they finish 9th. But all you have to do is keep winning to find out.
They were ranked 12th last year in Week 9.
Right.
And they were ranked 12th this year in Week 9. They were ranked 10th in the first playoff ranking last year and climbed all the way up to 5. So I think, yeah. And there was two lost teams that hosted last year.
Tuesday will be telling for sure.
I think Notre Dame also, you kind of look at, I'll go right down my Ohio brain syndrome that I don't know. I'm going to go to the doctor and get it diagnosed. I'll tell you this right now. I look at teams that could actually challenge Ohio State this year, because everybody's saying Ohio State's untouchable, and they're pretty damn good. When your quarterback has an 80% completion percentage, you have the best receiver in college football, maybe a guy that could make the Pro Bowl in the NFL. And then you have a defense doing what they're doing that's somehow playing better. You kind of look for teams, okay, who's actually going to challenge these guys? And I think the answers are probably the 3 teams I would pick. It was Miami till about 2 weeks ago. Then you forgot that they turned the ball over too much. That it would be, I do want to see them play Indiana, because I want to see how different Indiana is. I think Alabama could play with them because they have the athletes to do it, the quarterback to do it. And then if they played, okay, so we can't say if Indiana's playing them again, what's different? If Notre Dame continues on this track with CJ Carr and that running game and that defense, can they play them again? And is something different? Because I've actually watched Notre Dame take Ohio State to the last play here a couple years ago. And it was a competitive game last year, albeit one that we thought Ohio State was going to win.
You and I agree on this. Who are the 4 best teams, not highest ranked teams. Notre Dame doesn't belong to be ranked in the top 4 because of their resume. But I think you just noted those are the 4 best teams in the country. When you just watch the games, those are the 4 best teams right now.
If you watch the games and you know the talent, those are the 4 teams I would say are the most
Agreed.
worth
This
watching.
is a much better Indiana team than it was a year ago. And I thought Indiana belonged in last year. This is a much different Indiana team.
Yep, they are. So Tuesday will be telling to see what the committee thinks of the Big Ten too versus the AP poll.
Yeah.
You know, Iowa, Washington, they're not in the ranked right now. We'll see if the committee ranks those teams. Tuesday is going to be an interesting show.
Iowa, by the way. We're not talking enough about Iowa. I'm being dead serious. When you look at what they have left on their schedule, if they win out, there's 3 teams that if they win out will have an argument to be 4th. And that is USC if they win out, Michigan if they win out, and Iowa if they win out, because they got to play Oregon. That's a team that people aren't talking enough about. Now, I don't think they're going to win out, but if they win out, they will have a resume where they took Indiana down to the wire. Right. Would have beat Penn State, beat Oregon, beat USC on the road, beat Nebraska on the road, and wouldn't have lost a game since September. Nobody's talking about it. But
does anybody win 9 games better than Kirk Ferentz? Ever?
No.
With maybe a quarterback that is
Iowa being happy with who you are. That's a program that should be perfectly happy going 9-3 every year.
And that's why he's been there for 30 years. So let's get back to our Trocchi trivia and wrap it up here. So now that LSU is looking for a coach, I looked at the SEC coaches. Who are the 4 longest tenured coaches in the SEC who are, the current SEC? Driskell, give me one name. We'll go back and forth.
Kirby Smart.
Kirby is number 2.
I didn't sketch them all out yet, but Mark Stoops has to be one of them.
Mark Stoops is number 1. He's in his 13th year. Kirby's in his 10th. And then we've got 2 coaches in their 6th. BD, your guess is next.
Lane Kiffin.
Lane Kiffin is correct. And who's the other, Bill?
Oh, gosh. Oh, no.
Can we do it?
Beamer hasn't been, I might need a lifeline here, Brian. I want to say Beamer, but I don't think that's the right answer. I think he came in 21. No, Lee, where's Father Penny when you need him? He's had the lifelines the last. I don't have all the teams listed, so I can't. I'm trying to.
Shane Beamer is incorrect. BD, back to you.
Well, if you said somebody in year 6, it's not Josh Heupel. So I actually kind of was thinking for a second it was going to be Josh Heupel, but it's not him. So someone in year 6. You said Lane. It's not. Clark Lee.
Incorrect.
No, he's in year
Bill
5
Bender,
too. He's
back
in year
to
5
you.
too.
All right. I hold on.
It's not Drinkwitz, is it? Has he been
Drinkwitz?
there 6 years?
It is.
Drinkwitz makes sense. That makes sense.
Okay.
6th year at Missouri.
It seems like Barry Odom was there more recently than that.
I did. I thought it was close between.
I thought
Beamer.
Heupel was in year 6. Is who I thought it was at first. Yeah,
I think him and Beamer in 5, and Clark too.
Yeah.
I want a Irish Breakdown logo shirt on the side right here. I want the Irish Breakdown logo here, Brian, and then I want a shirt that just says Big Ten Bill for all these loyal listeners, just so I can come right out.
I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to make you. We have. I'm going to
like
have
a Big Ten Bill.
It's going to have It's going to be like this. It's going to be like the ones we do. It'll have IB right here.
I love
right
that.
Here,
I want that color.
Bill.
Can I get that color, and then you can start selling that to all these Notre Dame
Big Ten Bill. We're going to do it.
And I'm not looking. I'm not looking down at Notre Dame at all. Real quick before we go, I went to a Catholic school. My best friend and his buddies, guys that played high school ball with, plenty of Notre Dame fans. I've done these arguments, had fun with them. Brian brings out the best and sometimes the worst, but I've always classified myself as a Notre Dame sympathizer because I never root for them to lose.
I can attest that Bill is not an anti-Notre Dame guy. I just think it's the difference between outsiders that have bought into the lie that what Kelly did is the best that you can expect consistently Notre Dame. And I completely reject that because I think that was more about him purposely lowering the standard, which was my beef with him.
I also am a Big Ten homer, and I'm not going to apologize for it, even if they do.
You've never hid that, and you're definitely not an Ohio State guy. I can say that.
Does not back away from that.
All right,
Bill's not an anti-Notre Dame guy. I just think he's the typical outsider that just understandably has bought into the lie that this is the best Notre Dame can do because of whatever excuse.
I forget if it's blue pill or red pill, but I'll go talk about it with Jim Coyle on ISB next. So
you got to get your green and gold.
You got to hop on very soon, Bryan.
Get your green bill.
I'm wearing green right now. Come on.
Thank you for joining us,
hiding
Bryan.
it
You talk about 40 hours a week. Yeah.
Wait, real quick. Don't go yet. It says Ohio on it right there. That's a good way.
There you go. I knew it. I knew it.
There he is. Ohio brain syndrome. I hope there's a treatment for that. So anyway,
there is.
Bryan,
it happened to me. Thank you.
You talk about Irish football about 40 hours a week. Thank you for giving us 45 minutes here. It was fantastic. Thank you to everyone for listening to the CFB Nation All-America podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and joining us here on our YouTube channel. Once again, thanks to Irish Breakdown, your source for Notre Dame football information. Enjoy the rest of your day, and Bill and I will be back Thursday, 9:30 Eastern Time, to preview Week 10. See you then.